What's up, everybody? I'm Frankie Biggs. Thank you for stopping by to my channel. Man, do we have a big show for you. And if you haven't yet, please like, subscribe, and put that notification bell on so you know the next time we do one of these extraordinary and legendary interviews. In the house today on the Frankie Biggs Show is a legendary hip-hop artist. In fact, I'm going to be bold enough to say that he's hit a lot of firsts in the hip-hop industry. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Kurtis Blow. Kurtis, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. I'm doing mighty fine. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
And big ups to you, Frankie, for doing this, man. This is incredible. I'm just saying, representing the culture all the way over in Europe and of course in Korea as well. Man, this is big. This is big, and I'm excited to be here.
Man, I'm excited to have you, man. You the last time I saw you, you came here, you did a concert, and through mutual people, we finally got to meet, and it was so cool to meet you because it was just we gelled so quickly because you were also in a hurry. So we had to get a cab, and I took a little video. It's the first time I had ever seen anybody with those the little cameras. You had a little square camera. I'm like, wow, the GoPro. I was like, what is that, Kurtis? And you're like, this is my little camera. And you were doing it. So I have a lot of that footage of you doing that. And that night was just great, man. It was good to see you doing that. But that wasn't the first time we had met. Now I think about it, we met in Titusville, Florida.
Oh.
Yeah, we met with the folks down there had you do, it was some kind of a conference. I believe it may have been like a church conference or something. And that's where I met you. But then we met up again in Barcelona. So man, again, great to have you. So many things to talk about. Man, first question that I have for you, and I want to get my information up here to make sure that it's all correct. Now, I remember when I was a kid, and this is probably, I want to say about 81, 82, primarily my brother, who was a big influence in music at the time, was listening to a lot of rock and roll. And we were living shortly in Wisconsin. When we came back to Michigan, a lot of our friends in school were listening to a lot of hip hop. And I believe at that time, you had already had out, I'm looking at it, that you had the breaks out. And I think you were just about maybe to release a few years later would have been Basketball. But at that time, when the breaks had come out, like, explain to me that feeling, man, of like how it happened, how you got signed, and then that climb was just, if I remember, it was rather quick, and it all of a sudden placed you as a platinum hip hop artist. Like in that time frame, man, what was your outlook? Who was Kurtis at that moment before the blow up?
Wow, that's I could talk about this for 2-3 hours.
Go ahead, man.
Right, but let me just say that it was a dream world for me during that time. Just being a part of the system. I was a DJ back in 1978, 79. I was working at a club called Small's Paradise. It was owned by Wilt Chamberlain. Oh, is Wilt Small's Paradise, right?
Right.
And so I was the house DJ because there was another club called Charles Gallery on 125th Street that I was working on Tantalizing Tuesdays. I was in college. And so the owners of that club, it was Charles Huggins and of course his wife, Melba Moore, the legend, legendary singer. So Charles Gallery burnt down, and then they bought Wilt Small's Paradise over on 135th Street in Harlem. And they asked me to come over and be the house DJ for that club. And when I did that, that was the start of, I tell you, my dream world, because that was a hot club in Harlem. It was the hottest club. And they had performances there all the time. I mean, I'm talking about the number one top performers, Earth, Wind, and Fire were there.
Wow.
The Jackson Five came there, the Temptations, Melba Moore, people like Shaka Khan. It was incredible just being the house DJ. You know what that is. I'm playing every Friday and Saturday and Sunday nights. So I'm meeting all of these artists, and I'm just floored by the opportunity to say hello. The DJ booth was right in front of the dressing room. So they had to come past me to get to the dressing room. And I'm playing the music in between the shows and everything. And so I got to meet a lot. Aretha Franklin.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, Smokey Robinson came through. So I met all these people, and it just, gave me that fortitude, that will to carry on. And so I was a partner with Russell Simmons, and he gave a party downtown in Midtown Manhattan where he wanted me to come through. And actually, I went on stage and performed with Grandmaster Flash, who was there. And so we did so well. Now, Russell had invited these two writers from Billboard magazine to come to the show because he wanted to do a song during that time. That was 1979 when Sugar Hill Gang had released The Rapper's Delight. So every car, every bus, every train, every cab, every boom box, every radio station was playing this song 24/7. So Russell wanted to capitalize on that popularity of this new culture called hip hop. So he gave a party and invited these two writers from Billboard magazine to come out and check out the show and possibly do a record like the Sugar Hill Gang. Right. So Flash and I did so well that night. We rocked the house. And so later on, my producers, they chose me to be this liaison to the culture and, of course, make the first record that I made. And it was Christmas rap. So I got the deal. Was signed to a major label. Robert Ford and J.B. Moore were the producers of my first 5 albums. And I tell you, that was, like I say, a dream world, a dream come true. And it was my mission to go out and just meet all the artists again, as a star of, I would say, a budding star.
Right.
And so we set it up that way. When I got to Mercury Records, I wanted to meet all the artists that I played their music at Charles Gallery and Small's Paradise. And I did that. So it was a dream world. It was like something that I will never forget. It was, man, how can I say it was like the explosion. I don't know if you ever saw that movie Superstar, right? Or Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yeah.
And, she goes, I'm a star, I'm a superstar, but a lot of ego came through during that time as well. But it was amazing. It's indescribable, just the feelings that were going through my mind and my heart and my soul, just to be grateful. Man, I was blessed, fortunate, and it was a miracle. Here is this young kid, 20 years ago old, gets signed to a major record label, Mercury Polygram. And I don't know if you know what that means, but they had the long arm of promotion and publicity. So I went to the publicity department Beverly Page was the head, and I just talked to her. She told me later on, Curtis, you used to call me every day at 12 o'clock. What's going on? What's happening? What can we do today? I was working the system, being a college student. I knew about bureaucracy and red tape and all of that and all of the departments. So I went to every department and met every head of the department: publicity, promotion, video department, the legal department, publishing, all of that good stuff. I was in it to win it. And it was like just a dream. Like I say, just being available. And I traveled all around the world, and it was documented. The first guy to go to Japan, the first one to go to, Russia, the first one to go to, Spain, Germany, France, England. Oh my gosh. Traveling around the world, man, it was awesome. I can't even begin to explain how grateful and how happy and how blessed I was just going to these different countries. You talking about a 20-year-old kid from Harlem getting the opportunity to take these flights at huge heights and go to places that have never heard and seen hip hop before. And I was represented. 2 turntables and a microphone. It was just me and my DJ. And so I say, praise God. I thank God for that blessing. And I will never, never, ever forget it.
That kind of brings me to my next question, and the spirituality behind it as well, because I would imagine, like, just small little thing. When I was a rapper, very, very, very short time, but I got signed to Universal Music. And at that moment, reggaeton music had just starting to make its rounds. And I had first started off, they signed me as a Spanish hip hop artist, but then reggaeton hit, and that's kind of the direction. So because that was the direction, and because it was new at that time, I had felt, and I wonder if you felt the same way, I had felt like, wow, this is new. This isn't, it's picking up in a way that I didn't see coming. Like, so I'm not saying that I'm not the creator of the of reggaeton by any means. It just so happened that I was signed to a major label when it became a big deal, when people started to hear it. So I always had a bit of an intimidation feeling, because it was so new and it was just popping onto the radars in different parts of the country. With you, when that had happened, and yes, the Sugar Hill Gang had come out, that was everywhere. So it was a pressure cooker. That people were waiting for you. They were waiting for the next hip hop joint to come out. And when that happened, and it did as well as it did you have that? Was there moments that you kind of felt that way? Like, wow, this is obviously uncharted territory. Like, what was your feeling at that moment? You know what I mean? When you're about to embark something that you would have never known would have turned into an $8 billion industry later on. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it was, the time period where it was, like you said, it was fresh. It was brand new. It was like the audiences have never seen hip hop. Where I come from, the Bronx and Harlem, and how we got down with the turntables and the microphone. So I would go out on stage to places in France. I was in Paris, and I go out on stage, and the first thing the people would say was, "Where's your band?" Right? Him. So I'm out there and I'm doing the show, but at the end of the show, they were all like, cheering and throwing hands in the air and having a great time. So the pressure of being first, of pioneer, and I was not the only first one. There was also Sugar Hill Gang, of course, and Grandmaster Flash and a Melly Mel and a Furious Five, and the Sequence Girls and a Funky Four plus one more and a Treacherous Three. But I was on a major label, so I'm traveling to these countries first, and I knew the pressure. There was a little pressure because we had to represent this culture and this thing called hip hop so that it could carry on. If people didn't like us, they would not buy the records. We were opening the doors for careers for everyone who came after us. So if we were not good during that time, who knows what would have happened to hip hop? So I used my experience, and I tell you, the big part of that was DJ Hollywood. He was a master of the crowd response, and so I use a lot of crowd response. Throw your hands in the air. I even put it in my records too. You hear it in Christmas rap, and these songs I learned later. The DJ would play these songs when I'm not there, and the crowd in the club would respond to, throw your hands, say, "Oh yeah."
Right.
The crowd in the club, I'm not even there, and they are responding like that. So the people loved that. That was one of the most important things about spreading the culture in the early days, was making the people a part of the show at the concert. And that's what it was. And it was successful. So we had to represent and do really, really good shows. And man, I just thank God again for that miracle blessing of me having that experience and knowing the knowledge of, Cab Calloway and people like that, and crowd response and doing good shows and dancing, being a b-boy, breakdancer myself. I was doing flips and twists and splits and turns and all that. So it was monumental, these early shows that I did. And it was documented too. So being on a major label, I would go to, England and sit up at the office. We had a major office in every major city around the world. So I was working the system, like I said, and I would sit up, go there at 12 o'clock. We set it up, and in the conference room, and there was radio, there was television, there was newspapers and magazines. All the media was coming from 12 to 5. I set it up in every city that I went to, and the record company did, and that's how it got spread. That media, that representation to the press, and it was documented. The first person to go to Paris, the first person to go to Berlin. I was in Berlin. Oh my gosh, places
Germany
like
loves
that.
you. Yeah.
Right. And so, I am still grateful and amazed, and like I said, it is a story that I will never forget. And it's a big part of my life, even going back to those memories. So that's why I like to do interviews.
Well, when's the Netflix series coming out?
Man, I could talk about it. Yes, we need one. I'm talking to some producers right now. Well, I'm trying to finish the book first, my autobiography, and then we'll make a movie from that. Yes, I think that's very doable.
Yeah.
Like straight out of Compton.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I mean, that kind of footage, that production with your story would just be so awesome. And it would be really cool to have it done in that way. So it almost, between both movies, it's synonymous. It kind of sets the bar. Like, if you're going to take over, if you're really going to cover these legends, it's got to be done at the highest dollar. You know what I mean? At the highest value. I nothing short of that for you, man. My next question is that Now, with all that was happening, um, not too far after that, gangster rap had started to take over. Now, in context, because when your song came out, the breaks and basketball, the Christmas song, like everything, it seemed that you were very all about the party, all about just having a ball, having a great time. And then there was some political stuff, some, that you had put out that basically was talking about today. Everything was so very necessary. But then, that right about 85, 86, the West Coast had something else to say. You know what I mean? And introduced this whole gangster rap and stuff. At that moment in time, how did that fit with you when you started to see that part of hip hop starting to take form, to take shape?
Well, I will say that when gangster rap first came out, I was not happy because I made my mission to never use profanity in the rap song. And I got that from Jesse Jackson, who came to one of my shows back in 1980 in Chicago. See, Mercury Records the main office was in Chicago. And so they moved to New York about 3 years later, but the main office was in Chicago. So I went to Chicago to sign the contracts. First time I got on a plane, I went from Harlem to Chicago and signed the contracts. But I did a few shows there in Chicago. And Reverend Jesse Jackson came to one of my shows early in 1980 and said, "Kurtis, man, let me tell you something. And I want you to go back and tell all of your crew, all of your peers, you guys are the new icons, the new heroes of the civil rights movement of African Americans.
Word.
And if you want this thing called hip hop to go far and really cross over into the whole realm of the world, keep it clean. Keep it clean." So I went back to Sugar Hill Gang and Grandmaster Flash. We were doing an interview over at a radio station, Radio Scope. It was a national radio show. And so before the show, I went to the guys and I said, "Guys, look, I ran into Jesse Jackson and he pulled me to the side and he told me, man, we are the new heroes, the new, icons of the Black community, and we need to keep it clean in order for the thing to go far, and we can open the doors for everybody else, man." And so, man, that was like an eye opener. So right then and there, we decided to establish a code of ethics, which was we weren't going to diss each other. Now later on, we did. We violated. But in the early days, we weren't going to use profanity, weren't going to curse on the mic. And you can check the records of Sugar Hill Gang. They never used profanity. I made 240 rap songs and never used profanity. Only once I said "damn" in basketball. I said, "Yep. Dr. J shipped the whole damn team with moves that came right out of a dream," But that's the only time. Once out of 240 rap songs. So that whole mindset of keeping it clean, keeping the integrity and the ethics of the culture was instilled in us by Reverend Jesse Jackson. So when I went out to the West Coast for the first time and saw, I was a judge of a rap contest that they had in LA. And this one guy came up, he did very well. But there's another guy who came up. He was light-skinned black guy with a long ponytail, right? He started cursing up at my, can I use the profanity?
Sure can. Go ahead. Yeah.
Right.
Podcast. You say whatever you want.
The bitch better have no money. You know?
OMG?
No.
Oh, I was gonna say. Go ahead.
And he was talking about gang banging, how he would do this to you and do that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had to give him a 10 because he rocked the house. The crowd. I couldn't get out of there in LA. I'm a long way from home, so I had to chill and let the crowd decide who was the winner. And he was clearly the winner. So he won the contest. And later on, he came back and told me the story that gave him the fortitude and the inspiration to keep it going when he won that contest. And that was OG Gangster Ice-T.
Wow.
Right. Yes. When I got back home, I was also a judge at the New Music Seminar. I think that was 82, 83. And I decided I would never do that again. I'm not supporting this profanity in hip hop. I saw the future right before me that it's not going to be good. And plus Reverend Jesse Jackson told me and inspired me to keep it clean. So I'm doing a new music seminar, rap contest, and Roxanne Shante was there. She was 14 and cursing up a storm and disrespecting Busy B from head to toe. So I gave her a 4 out of 10. And she rocked the house just like Ice-T. But, she went on and kept, that motivated her to keep it going as well, even though I gave her a 4. Right. And she tells that story, why did I do that? It hurt her. But, that was my mindset, and I started speaking up on it, to the East Coast and West Coast, and that was the start of my downfall, I think, when I tried to, inspire and pressure other rappers. No, you don't have to curse, man. Stop saying these, profanity, profane communication. It says in the Bible, stay away from profane communication. And life and death are in the power of the tongue. Those who love it shall eat its fruit. So you're gonna, if you live by the gun, you're gonna die by the gun. So,
yeah.
So all those things. And I was vocal about it a few years in 85, 86. And I started seeing, in the press, I'm reading my interviews, man, I just sound like a hater, So I stopped doing that. And I befriended all of the gangster rappers and became friends with Dr. Dre and, of course, Snoop. We all lived in the same complex. When I moved to LA, Snoop Dogg was my neighbor in this complex. And also, what's the DJ, the Blood DJ? He was a great. How did you know DJ Quick?
Because I know all those people out there, man. I love those people.
DJ Quick lived right next door to
Great
me.
producer.
Yes, he is. And we became friends, man. And so, I don't want to say anything bad about gangster rap. They have come a long way. They have, made millions for the culture. They have the opportunity to feed their families and their communities and their friends and all of their workers, their staff, so it's a lot of money being made for that. But personally, I am, who I am. And but I'm not a hater anymore. It's all good. I'm too old to be going out there saying, do this, do that. Live your life, man. do what you do. It's between you and God. Amen.
Amen, man. Let me ask you too. Like you mentioned Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, all these guys, such as yourself. I mean, in the in the desktop of life, there are icons. You are absolutely one of the biggest, the first icon ever. So, and meaning you're first on so many levels. In that, after what you've just said, now that you've been able to see the landscape for what it is, and the people who have come up, right? Because there was a period there in between the 80s and 90s where that gangster rap meant something. It was a real lifestyle, and pretty soon people started getting murdered over shit that they said. You know what I mean? So it took on that life form. But then as we've progressed into the 2000s and into now, there's still that gangster rap, but it's kind of hit an underground mode again, where because now it seems like the Gen Zs and Alpha Gen, like the younger generation's not really into the gangster thing. It seems like they're actually opening their hearts up to the 80s. You know what I mean? So the question I have for you is, in that, you know, that atmosphere from the time that you were talking about to now with the gangsters, who sticks out in your mind as just some of the best representation of hip hop?
Well, I like a lot of the new rappers that are out there, but I mean, I think Nas is great. There's Future. There's also, I mean, Jay-Z is doing his thing. There's Talib Kweli. There's Kendrick Lamar is incredible. He's I think he has the throne right now.
Yes,
and so his raps are very witty, very fast, and complicated. He has the opportunity to change the mindset of all of our people. He can motivate and inspire our communities to not just survive, but to thrive. And he has that responsibility. I don't know if he knows. I know he has to know. He has the ability to change the world. And I pray that God will come down and touch his heart and let him know, you know, the future of this planet is in your hands. The future of the globe is on you. So, you know, anytime is the right time to do the right thing.
yeah, and I agree with
That's my message.
Yeah, I agree with you at that. I think that with the passing of Nipsey Hussle, right? I think that brother was on kind of that same mission, but unfortunately his life was cut short. And I think that's where Kendrick really was able to, I would say, further that marathon. You know what I mean? Further that what were where I believe that Nipsey was going. I mean, Kendrick was already hot by that time, but
Right.
it just seemed like he blew all the way up and just made examples. And he also outed a lot of people. I mean, he in a way, he's kind of like the Cat Williams of the rap industry in that way. You know what I mean? If we won't mention the guy's name, but I mean, he just pounded him into the ground. And it's funny, but at the same time, it's hip hop. And that's what it evolved to. You know what I mean? It did evolve into some beef stuff. And some of the stuff nowadays, I mean, remember how surprised we all were when Tupac died, and the same with Biggie. We were shocked at that. But now it's almost every week you hear about these rappers that are, you know, they're killing each other, and it's rough to hear, because I know that's not what you guys were talking about. You were so anti that. You know what I mean? And now
Right.
it although I will say that it's kind of hit, like I said, like a little bit of an underground thing. It's still very popular, but it's pop music, and especially worldly pop music, and I include hip hop in there, their version of hip hop in Europe and in Asia, it seems to be more predominant. I think people in the United States are starting to open themselves up a little bit to other interpretations of hip hop, which I think is important. And so, yeah, I agree, man. I'm going back. Sorry, we went off track, but those guys that you mentioned, Nas, and what did you think of like Will Smith though? Because in the midst of all the forget about the recent stuff, the media hits and all that stuff. Like him as a musician, when he came out, he also did it pretty semi clean too.
Hmm. Yes, I mean, big shout out to Will Smith. He's on tour right now in Europe, going all around Europe,
Nice.
doing these incredible sold out shows.
Okay.
And I saw one of the tapes. A friend of mine from Germany sent me a tape of him on stage, and he had break dancers out there doing power moves. I'm talking about the helicopter with the spinning around the head with the guy. I mean, and air twists and windmills and, backspins and 1990s, 2000s and all of that good stuff. So I was like really impressed to see him still doing his thing and representing the real culture. Now, when you say that the hip hop today is on another level, I agree with you, but I also think that is not hip hop. Some people may say that is not hip hop. A lot of my peers are saying that, this is not originally what we planned for hip hop. Like I told you the story with Reverend Jesse Jackson. We had the code of ethics, it was all about peace, unity, love, and having safe fun. And those are the pillars of hip hop. And I think that we need to get back to that if we can. I want to reach out to all the young people out there and say, my hat goes off to you. I love you. I thank you for keeping the culture alive. But how about instead of telling it like it is, tell it how it should be?
There you go.
And if every new rapper could put one positive song in their album, or how about a gospel rap, or if you're a Muslim, a religious rap saying that you love God and you want to see things go better, something positive in the midst of all of your album that you're making. And if we did that, that would cause a chain reaction. I think that the youth will be motivated and inspired by that. Just like this one guy, he made this song just a few months ago. They trying to hold me down all my life. They're trying to keep me down. You know who that is?
No, but I've heard that Diddy before.
Is that Lil Durk? I think that's his name. But he's from Chicago. But all the drill rappers and the trap rap have taken it to another level. And, it's going to a bit different on the level of being against peace, unity, and love, and having safe fun. So
it's funny you say drill, right? Because I know that you're at the forefront of all that type of new information, and everything, because this is your baby. You got to know what's happening. Hip hop is your baby. Recently, there's been this influx of drill rappers from the UK who are taking shots at American rappers. Now, and these are guys that have, like, maybe in the UK, they've got some pretty good buzz about them. You know what I mean? They've got some fame. They can sell out some shows, some club shows. But then, because they've got that buzz and they have this social media, audience, they start taking shots at people like Eminem, Jay-Z, like almost shooting into the abyss. I don't, know why they would do that. But at first, when it was happening, this is actually quite recent, at first when it happened, it seemed okay. This is hip hop. This is just these kids that are just calling out the older generation and just talking smack. You know what I mean? But what ended up happening is one of them ended up mentioning Eminem's daughter, which if you know anything about M, you can say whatever you want about him. It doesn't matter. But the moment that you come after him, Haley, this guy came out and he said some pretty derogatory things about Haley. Now, not only that, but then they also went after his friend. Oh, I can't remember the cat's name. His name slips my mind. Lucas Joyner or Joyner Lucas, I think. And,
Okay.
And like you're talking about two guys that you absolutely don't want any smoke with, especially Eminem. But it just, and my first thought was, okay, I can see it was for the hip hop and people, it came out as such. It got a little bit of notoriety in the press, and it was the way that they had slanted these articles were more like, this is kind of cute. This is for the culture. You know, they're just reaching out. They want to be noticed. But until all of a sudden the personal stuff started coming. My question to you is I can tell by your reaction is that when is it hip hop and then when is it get beyond that and starts to become some street shit and gets too serious? Like where do you think the threshold should be met without going beyond it and putting people in danger?
That's a good question, but I really don't want to go into this because it's very, let's say, critical. I think it's a covert operation from the governments to take away the power of hip hop, the voice of the people. When Public Enemy started making records and KRS-One started making records, and they were activists trying to support our people and motivate them to say, let's go out there and live our lives to the fullest. And this is what we're dealing with, all this racism, all this, anti this, anti that, all the wars that we are fighting, all the, financial problems that we are having, it's just the world is upside down right now. So I think that, it's a covert operation to destroy hip hop, and the way you can destroy hip hop, any movement, is kill the leaders and, or discredit the leaders. And this is what you are witnessing now, because the record companies are telling their artists, this is how we can sell records. We want to sell records. You want to make some money? All right. Do this hardcore, gangster, drill, wow. Who could tell an artist to go out there and diss Eminem? Who would want to? Where is the unity in that? Where's the peace? Where is the love in all of that? You want to make a name for yourself, but come on, let's think about Kendrick Lamar and Drake.
Yeah.
He jumped to the top of the charts, the top of the list. He is the king now. And, he did it by what he did. I don't want to speak too much more about this, but I say that, we need just to rethink what we are doing with our lives, and like I said before, you can tell it like it is, your opinions, but how it should be is more important.
Right. Be the change you want to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course.
I think that's important. My last question, because you answered my last question and halfway through. So I actually have another question, and I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this, but so I hope you enjoy it. At this moment in time, with everything, the incredible journey that you were able to go through and still are on that journey, the blessings that the Lord has given to you. If at this moment you could go back to that 18-year-old, 19-year-old kid right before, you blew up, what would you say to him right now?
Wow. You did a great job. I know that you had the plan that you worked out in college, and you did what you thought was the right thing, by studying music and studying the legends that were before you and finding out what they did to achieve their success, as well as, the actual good things that they did, as opposed to the bad things that may have taken their lives, and staying away from drugs and staying away from, domestic violence and abuse and all the problems of the world. I got through it, and you did a great job. God makes man. In the Bible it says, "Let us make man in our own image." And Jesus said, the kingdom of heaven is in you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking about what God would say to me.
Yeah.
And God would say, you did a good job. You did
That's
a good
amazing,
job.
man. That's really amazing.
And I walk around, I don't care what people say about me. Doesn't matter how you think about who I am. I know in my heart, I was at the Cool Herc parties back in 1974.
Right.
And I saw this thing that changed my life. Man, it was incredible. Just a place, a small club, and it was incredible. It was dark, black lights. We had the glow in the dark posters and the zodiac signs and the sexual positions, all these black light posters. And I used to wear white so I could glow in the dark. That was my thing. I still will wear white when I perform.
Yeah.
And that was it. I hold that dearly and deeply in my heart. No one can tell me I wasn't there. I seen it happen from the very beginning. Even going back to 1968 with James Brown and he was my favorite artist when I was 8, 9 years old. My mom loved Sam Cooke, but you couldn't tell me anything about James Brown. And I studied him, and I have all of his music, every golden hit, the greatest hits. I have about 3 or 4 greatest hits albums, and I know songs that people don't even know about James Brown, but it was the beat, that inspired me to break dance. It was his dancing. It was his actual vocal. And what he was saying in 1968, he made a song called Say It Loud, I'm Black and I'm Proud. And that, to me, revolutionized music in a number of ways because the beat was so funky. And before that, we were listening to the Motown sound, with the Temptations and the Supremes and Smokey and everybody, Stevie Wonder. And their beats were like, bah, 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 bah. The snare was on a 1, 2, 3, and a 4. And then we get into disco, where they changed it from the snare to now is the kick drum. It's boom, 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 boom. But James Brown revolutionized all of that and had what we call the syncopated beats of the snare and the hi-hat and the kick drum, like went like boom, that, boom, boom, that, boom, boom, that, boom, boom, that, boom, boom, that. It was funky. It was funk. My gosh, soul music. And it was incredible. When we heard that sound, you know, we lost our minds and everyone wanted to be James Brown. So I hold that in my heart, man. I know that story. I know the transition of, you know, from the Motown to soul music to the funk with Parliament Funkadelic, you know, and groups that I stand on the shoulders of these legacies, these legends that I studied in college. And that was my thing. That was my thing. I wanted to keep it real. I wanted to keep it continued from those days when I was a kid, listening to the Jackson 5. You know, I Want You Back, you know, that song right there. And Scorpio. There were many songs that were so funky that played on the radio, and I wanted to continue that legacy. So,
Well, you did.
yes.
You absolutely did. I mean, you hit every spot you set yourself up for. Like it was the right way to be. Exactly the way I've told so many artists that you have to work on your craft, you have to know what it is. To know what it is means you have to study. And if you're going to study, you've got to start from the beginning. If you're going to be a radio star or you're going to be anything like that, it isn't just about the music. It's the business too. And it also, where is this music going to premiere? How are you going to be seen? If you could study those things and understand how labels work and production deals and publishing, you're going to be fine. You'll realize that somebody out there is definitely going to like what you put out as long as you're consistent and as long as you're passionate about it, because it'll show, and it did with you. So with that said, this last question, what advice do you want to, I know I said last question many times ago, what's this last thing that you want to tell everybody out there watching this today?
Well, I would like to say to all of the youth, the young people, thank you. Thank you for keeping this culture alive. We have come a long way. We have changed the world, and you can change the world too. I say my advice is to get your education. If you want to be a rapper, if you want to be a musician, if you want to be a producer or a DJ, you know, study it again and do the research. You know, like you said, go out and find the history of it. And within that history, find one or two people who were successful. And you study the steps that they took to achieve their success. You follow those steps as well, and you also will achieve success. 9 times out of 10, you will achieve success. Education is the most important thing.
Amen. Thank you, man, for spending time with me doing this, man. It's a pleasure to talk to you and to get all this knowledge from such a legend like yourself, especially in hip hop. You know what I mean? It wasn't just hip hop, because your songs and your success has resonated into so many different areas of the entertainment industry. You know what I mean? Like you are the big neon lights that say entertainment industry. Like that is who you are, Mr. Show Business. And it's just a pleasure to have you. And hopefully it's not going to be the last time. And anything on this end, as far as production, you already know, you get so many producers that spit that out. But man, you always know, I'm always there for you for anything. So thank you so much for coming onto the show. And thank you guys for hanging out. If you guys, most of the people that watched Kurtis are what's called Army. They are the fandom of Korean music, Korean pop music, but they're the fandom for BTS. And we'll get into that in our next little segment. For those of you who have stopped by, thank you so much. For everybody in the chat box on the side there, thank you for your questions, and any other questions that you may think you may want to ask, just go ahead and ask it, and maybe next time we'll go over some of these questions with Mr. Kurtis Blow here. But thank you for stopping by, and we will talk to you guys later. Kurtis, thank you so much, man, and have a great week.
All right. Thank you.
Peace out, man.